What would you do if your own family turned their back on a dying grandmother, tossing her out like a worn-out rag, only to beg for forgiveness when the tables turned? In a quiet town where love and betrayal baked together like bitter dough, one woman's choice sparked a storm that no one saw coming. Get ready for a tale of heartbreak, karma, and the kind of justice that hits harder than a slammed door. Hit that subscribe button now and help us reach our first 1,000 supporters. Don't miss a second of this unforgettable story. My name's Laura Bennett, and at 52, I've come to see life as a patchwork quilt. Some pieces soft and warm, others frayed and rough around the edges. These days, you'll find me behind the counter of Harper's Sweet Haven, a little bakery tucked on the outskirts of our quiet town. It's not much to look at, just a squat brick building with a faded sign, but it's mine, built with my husband Tom over years of sweat and flour-dusted dreams. The air inside hums with the scent of vanilla and browning butter, and there's a rhythm to it all. The chime of the door, the clink of coins, the soft chatter of folks who've known me since I was a kid. Tom's usually out back, tinkering with the oven or stacking bags of sugar, his steady hands keeping our little world turning. We don't have children, but this place feels like our baby, and it's enough to fill the spaces where kids might have been. I wasn't always rooted like this, though. Growing up, my compass was my grandmother, Dorothy Harper. Dottie, to everyone who loved her. She was a small woman with a big heart, her silver hair always pulled back in a loose bun, her eyes crinkling when she laughed. Some of my best days were spent in her kitchen, a cozy room with chipped yellow cabinets and a table that wobbled if you leaned too hard. I'd sit there, maybe 8 or 9, my legs swinging as she showed me how to knead dough or dust a pie with cinnamon. "Gentle now, Laura," she'd say, her voice like a lullaby. "It's not just food, it's love you're shaping." Then she'd launch into stories, how she met Grandpa under the oak tree by the creek, or how she'd stretch a dime to feed 5 kids during the lean years. Those afternoons were golden, endless, like the sun forgot to set. Dottie wasn't just my grandma. She was my safe harbor, the one who held us together when Mom passed and Dad drifted away. That's why the call shook me to my core. It came on a Tuesday late afternoon while I was wiping down the counter, the bakery quiet except for the hum of the fridge. The phone rang and I answered without thinking, expecting a supplier or a customer. Instead, it was a nurse from St. Mary's Hospital, her voice calm but weighted. "Mrs. Bennett, I'm calling about your grandmother, Dorothy Harper. She's been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, stage 4. She's got 6 months, give or take." The words hit like a brick through a window. My hand froze on the rag and I felt the air leave my lungs. Tom must have seen my face because he was at my side in a heartbeat, his brow furrowed. "Laura, what's wrong?" I couldn't answer, not right away. All I could see was Dottie's smile fading, her hands stilling. The nurse went on, saying Dottie was stable for now, living with my brother Mark and his wife Kelly across town. I mumbled a thank you, hung up, and looked at Tom. "It's Dottie," I said, my voice cracking. "She's dying. I need to see her." I grabbed my coat and drove to Mark's place, my mind racing. Their house loomed ahead, a boxy 2-story with sleek windows and a manicured lawn. Too perfect, too sterile. Mark opened the door, his tie crooked, his face distracted. "Hey, Laura," he said, barely glancing up from his phone. "She's upstairs. It's been a long day." I didn't wait for more, pushing past him and climbing the stairs to the guest room. What I saw stopped me dead. Dottie lay in a narrow bed, her thin frame drowning in a pile of blankets, her face pale as chalk. Her hair, once so neat, was a tangled mess, and a bowl of cold soup sat on the nightstand, congealed and forgotten. She looked up, and her eyes, still bright despite everything, found mine. "Laura, my girl," she whispered, reaching out. I took her hand, and it felt like paper so light I was afraid it might crumble. "I'm here, Dottie," I said, kneeling beside her. "I'm right here." Mark shuffled in, Kelly trailing behind, her arms crossed, tight. "We're doing our best," Kelly said, her tone clipped. "She's been tough to manage, and we've got our own plates full." I turned, my chest tightening. "Your best? She's skin and bones, Kelly. This isn't managing, this is neglect. Mark shrugged, staring at the floor. I'm slammed at work, Laura. Kelly's been handling it, but the bills are stacking up. We're not made of money. I stared at them, my brother and his wife, and saw strangers. This was Dottie, the woman who'd stitched our family back together with nothing but grit and grace, and they were treating her like an inconvenience. Right then, I knew what I had to do. I stood there in that cramped guest room, Dottie's hand trembling in mine, and something inside me snapped. The air was thick with neglect, stale soup, unwashed sheets, the faint hum of a TV downstairs where Mark and Kelly were probably parked oblivious. My grandmother deserved better than this, better than them. You're not staying here, I said, my voice low but firm. Dottie's eyes widened, a flicker of hope breaking through the exhaustion. Laura, I don't want to be a burden, she murmured, but I shook my head. You're not. You never have been. You're coming home with me and Tom. She didn't argue, just gave me that small, grateful smile that used to light up my childhood. Mark and Kelly didn't put up much of a fight. Maybe they were relieved, I couldn't tell. Kelly crossed her arms tighter, her lips pursed. If that's what you want, fine, just don't come crying to us when it gets hard. Mark rubbed the back of his neck, avoiding my glare. Yeah, Laura, you sure about this? She needs a lot. Meds, doctor visits, we've been stretched thin. I didn't dignify that with a response. Stretched thin? They lived in a house twice the size of ours, drove cars that gleamed in the driveway, while Dottie wasted away up here. I turned my back on them and started packing her things. A few faded dresses, a photo of Grandpa, her old Bible with the cracked leather cover. It all fit in one bag, and that broke my heart more than anything. Tom was waiting when I pulled up to the bakery, the sky bruising purple with dusk. He didn't ask questions, just took the bag from my hands and helped me guide Dottie inside. She leaned on me, her steps slow, but her grip was stubborn, like she refused to let go of life just yet. We settled her into the spare room above the shop, a little space we'd used for storage until now. Tom hauled out boxes of old receipts while I made up the bed with fresh sheets and the quilt Dottie had sewn for me years ago. It smelled like lavender and memories, and when she sank into it, she sighed. This feels like home, she said, her voice soft but steady. I sat beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. It is home, Dottie. You're with us now. The next few days blurred together. I called the hospital, got her meds sorted, and set up a visiting nurse to check in twice a week. Tom rigged a little bell by her bedside. She'd ring it if she needed us, though she hated to bother anyone. Mornings I'd bring her tea and sit while she sipped it, her hands shaky but her eyes sharp. She'd watch me through the window as I worked downstairs, the bakery bustling with the early crowd. Sometimes she'd call down suggestions. More cinnamon in those rolls, Laura. And I'd laugh, feeling her presence weave back into my life like a thread I'd lost. Tom took to her too, his quiet way calming her when the pain crept in. We weren't doctors or miracle workers, but we were family, and that was enough. Then one afternoon, about a week in, Dottie dropped a bombshell. I was folding laundry by her bed when she looked at me, her gaze steady despite the shadows under her eyes. Laura, I've been thinking, she said. I want to sell the old house. I stopped mid-fold, a towel dangling in my hands. The old house? A rambling Victorian on the edge of town, where she'd raised Mom and Uncle Pete, where I'd spent those endless summers. It was falling apart now, the porch sagging, the paint peeling, but it was hers, the last piece of her past. Are you sure? I asked. That's your home, Dottie. She nodded, her jaw set. It was. But I'm here now with you. I don't need it anymore, and I want to take care of things before I go. The money, it'll help. I trust you to handle it. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to argue, to cling to that house like it could keep her here longer, but I saw the resolve in her face, the same stubborn streak that got her through decades of hard times. Okay, I said finally. I'll call a realtor tomorrow. Whatever you want, we'll make it happen. She reached for my hand, her fingers cool against mine. "You're a blessing, Laura, always have been. I just wish Mark could see things the way you do." Her voice dipped, a flicker of sadness crossing her face, and I squeezed her hand tighter. "He's still your son," I said, though the words felt hollow. "Maybe he'll come around." She didn't reply, just closed her eyes, and I let the silence settle between us. That night, I told Tom about the house over a late dinner, burnt toast and coffee, all we had energy for. He leaned back in his chair, his brow creased. "She's serious about this, huh?" he said. "It's a big move." I nodded, stirring my mug. "She wants to tie up loose ends. I can't blame her, but Mark and Kelly, they're not gonna like it." Tom grunted, a sound that said he agreed, but didn't want to stir the pot. "They've got their own mess," he said. "Let them deal with it." I wished it were that simple, but I knew my brother. The house wasn't just brick and wood to him. It was a lifeline, a payout he'd been counting on. And when he found out, I had a feeling the storm we'd dodged so far was about to break wide open. The bakery felt different the next morning, like the air held its breath. I was shaping dough for scones when the phone rang, shrill and insistent. Tom glanced over from the sink, his hands dripping, but I waved him off and picked up. It was Mark, his voice tight as a coiled spring. "Laura, what's this I hear about selling the house?" I froze. A lump of dough stuck to my fingers. Word travels fast in a small town, but I hadn't expected it to reach him this quick. "It's Dottie's call," I said, keeping my tone even. "She wants to settle things her way." He let out a harsh laugh, the kind that made my skin crawl. "Settle things? That house is ours, family property. You don't get to swoop in and play hero." I gripped the receiver, my pulse thudding. "I'm not playing anything, Mark. She's dying. This is what she wants." He didn't miss a beat. "Yeah, well, we'll see about that." The line went dead, and I stood there, the hum of the bakery fading as dread settled in my chest. I didn't have to wait long for the fallout. That evening, just as I was locking up, headlights swept across the front window. Mark's SUV screeched into the lot, and he and Kelly stormed out, their faces twisted with fury. I barely had the door unlatched before Kelly was in my face, her voice sharp as a blade. "You're stealing from us, Laura. That money's ours. Ours by right." I stepped back, the cold night air biting at my skin. "Stealing? You threw her out like yesterday's trash. She's making her own choices now." Mark loomed behind her, his hands shoved in his pockets. "You don't get it, do you? We need that house. My business went under last year. Debts are eating us alive. We were counting on it." For a split second, I faltered. Mark's eyes were bloodshot, his shoulders slumped, and I saw a flicker of the kid he used to be, the one who'd trail after me and Dottie, begging for extra cookies. But then Kelly jabbed a finger at me, her nails painted red like warning flags. "Don't act all high and mighty. You've got your cute little bakery, your perfect life. We're drowning, and you're cutting us off." I snapped back to reality, anger flaring hot in my chest. "Drowning? You've got a roof over your heads, food on your table. Dottie's the one fighting for every breath, and you couldn't even bother to heat her soup." Kelly's mouth opened, then shut, her face flushing. Mark stepped forward, his voice low. "You're twisting this, Laura. We didn't mean to hurt her. It's just hard." I wanted to scream, to shake them until they saw what they'd done, but I held it in. "Hard," I said. "Try watching her fade away in that room you stuck her in. That's hard." Before they could argue more, I heard the bell jingle upstairs, Dottie's signal. I turned on my heel and left them standing there, their shadows stretching long across the pavement. My heart pounded as I climbed the stairs, but when I reached her, Dottie was sitting up, her face calm despite the strain. "I heard them," she said, her voice raspy. "They're mad, aren't they?" I nodded, sinking onto the bed. "Furious. They think the house is theirs." She let out a dry chuckle. "Figures. Mark's always wanted the easy way out." I searched her face, looking for doubt, but there was none. "You still sure about this?" I asked. She reached for my hand, her grip weak but steady. "More than ever. Call the lawyer tomorrow, Laura. Sell it, and you handle the money. I trust you." I swallowed hard. her faith in me a weight I wasn't sure I could carry. "What about Mark? He's your son." Her eyes softened, a flicker of pain crossing them. "He is, and I love him, but he made his bed when he turned his back on me. You're the one who's here, sweetheart. You and Tom." Her words sank deep, and I nodded, tears prickling my eyes. "Okay, I'll do it." The next day, I made the call. The realtor, a brisk woman named Ellen, came by that afternoon, her clipboard in hand. She walked through the old house with me. Dottie couldn't make the trip, and I saw it through fresh eyes. The creaky stairs, the chipped banister, the kitchen where I'd learned to bake. It hurt to let it go, but Dottie's voice echoed in my head. "It's time." Ellen listed it that week, and offers started rolling in fast. The place had charm, she said, bones worth more than the peeling paint suggested. I kept Mark and Kelly in the dark, figuring they'd hear soon enough. Part of me hoped they'd come around, show some shred of remorse, but deep down, I knew better. A few nights later, I was closing up when Tom came in from the back, his face grim. "Mark just called," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Said they're talking to a lawyer. They're gonna fight this." My stomach dropped. Fight it? It's Dottie's house, her decision. Tom shrugged, his calm masking the worry I knew he felt. "They're desperate, Laura. Desperate people do dumb things." I leaned against the counter, the weight of it all pressing down. Upstairs, Dottie's bell stayed silent, but I could feel her resolve stealing mine. Mark and Kelly could lawyer up all they wanted. Dottie had made her choice, and I'd see it through, no matter what they threw at us. The days after Mark's threat felt like walking on a tightrope. Every ring of the phone, every creak of the bakery door made me brace for bad news. Ellen, the realtor, called midweek with an update. The old house had 3 offers, all above asking price. "It's the location," she said, her voice crackling over the line. "Folks see potential." I thanked her, my mind spinning. Potential. That's what Dottie had seen in us all, once. Now it was down to me to make sure her last wish came true. I told her to take the highest bid and push it through fast. No delays, no room for Mark to meddle. She promised to handle it, and I hung up, glancing upstairs where Dottie was resting. Her bell hadn't rung all morning, and that quiet scared me more than any fight with my brother. The sale closed 10 days later, quicker than I dared hope. Ellen dropped by with the paperwork, a fat check clipped to the top. More money than I'd ever seen in one place. Dottie was awake when I brought it to her, propped up on pillows, her breathing shallow but her eyes clear. I sat beside her, spreading the documents on the quilt. "It's done," I said. "The house is sold. This is yours." She studied the check, her lips curving into a faint smile. "Good girl," she murmured. "Now listen, I want half of it to go to a fund, something for the kids around here. Call it the Harper Hope Fund. Teach 'em a trade, give 'em a start." I nodded, scribbling notes on the margin. "And the rest?" She squeezed my hand. "That's for you and Tom. Keep this bakery going and take care of yourself when I'm gone. Promise me." Her voice broke on that last word, and I choked back a sob. "I promise," I whispered. Word reached Mark and Kelly the next day, and they didn't waste time. They showed up at the bakery just as I was pulling a tray of muffins from the oven, the air thick with cinnamon. The door slammed open, and there they were. Kelly's face streaked with mascara, Mark's jaw clenched tight. "You cut us out," Kelly shouted, her voice bouncing off the walls. "That was our inheritance, Laura." I set the tray down, my hands steady despite the storm in my chest. "Your inheritance? You lost that when you left her to rot. This was Dottie's choice, not mine." Mark stepped closer, his eyes wild. "We're broke, Laura. The bank's taking the house. We needed that money to survive." His voice cracked, and for a moment I saw desperation, not anger. But then Kelly lunged forward, jabbing a finger at me. That was it, the line they shouldn't have crossed. "Get out," I said, my voice ice cold. "You don't talk about her like that. Not here, not ever." Kelly flinched, but Mark grabbed her arm, pulling her back. "This isn't over," he muttered. "We've got a lawyer. We'll fight the will." They stormed out, leaving the door swinging, and I stood there, trembling, the muffins cooling behind me. Tom came in from the back, his face grim. "You okay?" he asked, resting a hand on my shoulder. I nodded, but I wasn't sure. Upstairs, Dottie's bell rang, faint but insistent, and I climbed the steps with a weight I couldn't shake. She was waiting, her face pale but fierce. "I heard him again," she said. "They're not going to stop, are they?" I sank onto the bed, rubbing my temples. "They're trying to contest it, say it's not fair." Dottie let out a dry laugh, then coughed, her body shaking. "Fair? They don't know the word. Do what you have to, Laura. I'm done with their nonsense." I looked at her, this tiny woman who'd given me everything, and felt a fire kindle inside. "They won't win," I said. "I'll make sure of it." The lawyer Mark hired sent a letter a week later, claiming Dottie wasn't in her right mind when she signed off on the sale. It was nonsense. Ellen had witnesses, doctor's notes, everything airtight, but it still rattled me. I hired our own attorney, a sharp woman named Claire who'd grown up in town. She pored over the papers and smiled. "They've got nothing," she said. "This is ironclad. They're just grasping." She was right. The case fizzled out before it even hit a courtroom, and Mark and Kelly slunk away, their threats empty. But they didn't go quietly. A few days later, they showed up again, this time softer, pleading. Kelly's eyes were red, Mark's voice hoarse. "We're sorry," he said. "We messed up. Can't we fix this?" I looked at them, my brother and his wife, and saw regret, but too late. "You had your chance," I told them. "Dottie gave you years. You don't get to rewrite that now." They left, heads bowed, and I locked the door behind them. That night, Dottie asked me to bring her downstairs. She was too weak to stand, so Tom carried her, gentle as a father with a child. We settled her in a chair by the counter, and I pulled out her old spice cake recipe, the one she'd made for my 10th birthday when she'd let me lick the spoon. Her hands couldn't mix anymore, but she guided me, her voice a whisper over the clatter of bowls. "A pinch more nutmeg, Laura. That's the secret." We baked it together, the oven's warmth filling the room, and when it was done, we shared a slice. It tasted like childhood, like love, like her. "You're my heart, Laura," she said, her eyes shining. "Don't ever forget." I held her hand, tears slipping free, and promised I never would. Time slipped through my fingers after that night with the spice cake. Dottie hung on for 6 months, just like the doctors predicted. But those months were a gift and a goodbye all at once. She'd sit with me in the bakery when she could, wrapped in that old quilt, her voice fading but her spirit stubborn as ever. Some days she'd tease Tom about his coffee. "Too strong, you'll scare the customers." And he'd grin, pouring her a weaker cup just to hear her laugh. Other days, she'd drift off mid-sentence, her head tipping back, and I'd watch her chest rise and fall, counting every breath like it was gold. The nurse came more often as the weeks ticked by, her updates quieter, her eyes kinder. "She's comfortable," she'd say, and I'd nod, knowing comfort was all we could give her now. One morning, I woke to silence. No bell, no soft call from upstairs. The air felt heavy, like the world was holding its breath. I climbed the steps, my heart thudding, and found her in bed, her face peaceful, a faint smile curving her lips. She was gone, slipped away in the night like a shadow fading at dawn. I sank beside her, taking her hand, still warm, but so still, and let the tears come. Tom found me there, his arms wrapping around me without a word, and we stayed like that until the sun crept through the curtains. Dottie Harper, my rock, my light, was free. We buried her a few days later in the town cemetery, a small plot under an oak tree she'd loved. The service was simple. Just me, Tom, a handful of old friends who'd known her, laugh, her stories. I laid a slice of spice cake by her stone, a silly thing maybe, but it felt right. Mark and Kelly didn't show, and I didn't expect them to. Word trickled back later that they'd lost their house, foreclosed, swallowed by the debts Mark couldn't outrun. Folks said they'd moved to a cramped apartment across the county, scraping by. I didn't feel smug or satisfied hearing it, just a quiet ache. like a bruise that wouldn't heal. They'd reaped what they sowed, and I couldn't muster the energy to care beyond that. The bakery became my anchor after she was gone. I threw myself into it, rolling dough before dawn, icing cakes until my hands cramped. Harper's Sweet Haven kept humming, the bell above the door chiming with every customer, and I found her in the rhythm of it all. The Harper Hope Fund took shape too. Half of Dottie's money set up a little program at the community center. Kids came after school, learning to bake, to weld, to fix cars, their chatter filling a space she'd have loved. The rest of the cash went into the shop. A new oven, a fresh coat of paint, a cushion for the lean months. Tom and I didn't talk about it much, just kept moving, her promise stitched into every day we lived. Months later, I got a letter from Mark. It was short, scrawled in his messy hand. "Laura, I'm sorry. We were wrong. I miss her." No return address, no plea for forgiveness. Just those words, stark on the page. I read it over coffee, the bakery quiet before the morning rush, and felt nothing. Not anger, not pity, just a hollow space where he used to fit. I tucked it in a drawer and went back to kneading dough, the ache of losing Dottie sharper than any grudge I could hold. Kelly never reached out, and I didn't expect her to. They'd made their choices, and I'd made mine. Now, a year on, I'm still here. The bakery's doing better than ever. Folks come for the scones, stay for the stories I tell about Dottie. She'd have loved this, they say, and I smile, knowing it's true. Tom's still my rock, his quiet strength keeping me steady when the grief sneaks up. I miss her every day, the way she'd hum off key, the crinkle of her eyes, the warmth of her hands over mine. But she's not gone, not really. She's in the spice cake I bake every Sunday, the quilt I drape over the couch, the kids who grin as they frost their first cupcakes at the center. She's in me, in the life I've built, in the love I give. I think about family a lot these days, what it means, what it costs. Mark and Kelly thought it was blood and bank accounts, a ledger to balance, but Dottie taught me different. Family's the people who show up, who hold you when the nights get long, who fight for you when you can't fight for yourself. She was that for me, always, and I tried to be that for her in the end. Mark's out there somewhere, living with his regrets, and I hope he finds peace someday. But me, I've got mine, right here in the clatter of pans, the smell of rising dough, the echo of her voice in my heart. Dottie's with me, forever, and that's more than enough.